Okay, my friends, let's talk about graphing given standard form. Here's the thing with standard form. You either love it or you hate it, but it's just another way of doing things, so let's not get too stressed about it. You have two options for graphing in standard form. Number one is you can create a table. Number two is you can manipulate it into slope-intercept form. Since it's a little bit easier to work with things we already know, I'm going to manipulate it into slope-intercept form, because that does two things. It allows us to practice solving and manipulating an equation, and it also allows us to practice slope-intercept form. So, in slope-intercept form, I want y to be by itself. So that means I'm going to move everything except for the y over to the right side. I want to move this whole term over because I am not solving for x. I'm just moving it away from the y. Remember, when you move across this line, you have to do the opposites. Now, the reason I do the opposite is to cancel out this 3x. I actually have to subtract it. So what I really did here, my invisible math, was I did 3x minus 3x to get 0. And then I did 0 plus 4y to get 4y. That's the invisible math I just did. All right. Now, again, I want y by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by 4. And then again, my invisible math right there was I did 4y divided by 4 to get 1y. And then the last thing, just to make it a little bit easier for myself to graph it, I'm going to simplify any fractions I can simplify. So I know 8 over 4 simplifies to 2. And now I have my slope-intercept form, so I can identify my slope and my y-intercept. So my y-intercept is 2, which means I'm going to go to my y-axis. Remember, there's always a y where your y-axis is, so if you forget where that's at, definitely check your coordinate plane. I'm going to plot 0, 2. Notice how I wrote the coordinate to help my brain know exactly what I was doing. And I circled my y-axis to help me remember exactly where I was putting it. Now remember, your M is your action, so I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to interpret what that means before I do it. So the negative 3 means down 3, the 4 means right 4. Which makes sense because your slope is always change in y over change in x. Your y's go up and down, your x's go left and right. So from this coordinate point, from my beginning, I'm going to go down 3, right 4. From here, I'm going to go up 3, right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I've seen a lot of students do this wrong because they didn't take the time to count correctly. So really take that extra second and make sure you can do the humps if you want to, but you're going 1, 2, 3, checking to make sure you actually went down 3 and not accidentally down 2 or down 4, and then right 4. Taking that extra second to make sure you did that correctly make a big difference. A lot of people just will do all of that work and then accidentally count incorrectly. Now, this is not the only way to do this problem. So it's given to you in standard form. So you can use that to calculate your x and y intercepts and then graph those as well. You can also make a table. I always like turning it into slope-intercept form, especially with everything else you're learning in this unit. It just kind of combines it all and gives you one less thing to have to memorize. But you can always make a table out of this. You can always find your x and y intercepts. Okay, let's try the next one. Remember, the real learning happens when you try to do them and then check with what I did. Try to do it by yourself first, because if you're only ever watching the teacher do it or ChatGPT or whatever you're doing, you're never going to actually remember how to do it. You have to try it yourself. And also, ChatGPT typically does math problems incorrectly. Please do not use that as a resource. There are so many other things out there, like Ask Rose and things like that, that will give you correct answers and correct ways of doing it. Okay, again, I'm going to change this into slope-intercept form because I remember what slope-intercept form is, and I also remember how to manipulate equations. I want to make sure that my y stays over here and everything else moves. I'm going to rewrite the equation nice and clean. Then I'm going to move this whole term over because I don't want it with my y. And whenever I move it over, I'm going to subtract it. Because remember, the invisible math I just did there was 2x minus 2x. That's how I got 0 minus y. This part's a little tricky. I can't have this negative sign. So think of this as a -1 in front of the y. In order to get rid of a -1 in front of the y, you have to divide by -1, which is going to change all of the signs on the other side of the problem. So again, what I really did here, my invisible math, is divided the whole equation by -1 to get a +1. So now I have my slope-intercept form. I'm going to rewrite my equation. Actually, let's keep going with the mistake I almost just made. So if I do it like this, you might get confused and think your slope's 4. But your slope isn't 4, right? Because your x isn't there. So that's where that nice little color coding comes in handy. Because then you can see, okay, my slope is 2. So if you're in a rush, you might accidentally do that incorrectly. So take that time to make sure you actually know what's in each spot, because your brain might think that the -4 is your slope if you go too quickly. Again, I'm going to interpret this so it's up to right 1. Remember, it can't be up to and then right 0, because 2 over 0 doesn't work. So it has to be 2 over 1. And then my y-intercept is 0, -4. I'm going to go to my line. I'm going to plot 0, -4. And then I'm going to count up to right 1. And then I like to use my little bubbles to make sure that I do it correctly. I'm only going to do 2. Most of the time you don't have to do a lot. And then remember, I didn't have a ruler. I just used the thing I have closest to me. Alright, that's how you graph an equation. Remember, you can always do extra practice by Googling practice graphing equations, and it'll give you practice. Sometimes you want to put free in there. Alright, have a wonderful day. And remember, you are super smart. You just need to slow down and take your time. And use your strategies to help you stay organized.